Hello, my name's Thomas O'Regan and I'm a professional property investor. Now, I'm doing a series on why I think or why high-rise apartments are good investments through a professional investor's standpoint and lens. Now, people say, and when I say people, generally everyone says that invest in land because land is the ultimate investment. Land is the best investment you can do. But the question I pose to you from these statements is, who are these people? How much investments do they own? And how did they get there? Because it's very different to have someone that has worked their whole life and spent their entire income on funneling it into investments versus someone that has built a large property portfolio and never used their own money except for maybe a saving up for the initial first deposit to grow their investment portfolio to where they are. One route is hard and one route is easy. Now, let's get into the topic for today. And the topic for today is farmland as an investment versus high-rise apartments. And again, I want to stress that if everyone says land is so great and buildings are not, then here is an example demonstrating ultimately what people are saying versus what I'm saying as an investor and the end result for you if you are looking to get into investing. Now, for this example, both scenarios, they have $1 million of cash to start, and this is just an example, obviously, but you can scale this up or down however you like. Now, what these people are going to use with a $1 million cash is they're going to use it for a 20% deposit. Now, this is just an example, guys, so don't go crazy, but basically that $1 million will be used as a 20% deposit to buy $5 million worth of farmland. And that's what the average punter would do, I guess, because land goes up and land's the ultimate investment. And the investor, or me, what I would do with the $1 million cash is I would buy $5 million worth of high-rise apartments. And you're probably already thinking that's a terrible idea. Now, let me explain to you why it's not. Okay, so what would today, now, right now, 2026, August 2026, I could buy, and in fact, I have bought 17 apartments for 17 apartments at around a 300K price point, which is generating an income of $468,000. So that's the starting point for both of these two in different types of investments. One's what I'm doing and one's what maybe a normal person would consider to do a good way of spending $1 million on an investment, right? So this is a 30-year test, right? This is an example to paint out the picture of 30 years. Now, the goal of this is after 30 years, both people will have zero debt. They want to pay their debt position down to zero. Now, let's look at this and break it down. So for the farmland, what is the actual cash flow of purchasing a $5 million farmland with a $1 million deposit? So the cash flow on that farmland is minus $5,700 a week. Okay, so basically, if the person bought the farmland, they are in the hole $5,700 a week, or almost $300,000 a year. Now, obviously, if you were to go with this strategy, you'd need to make far more money than any normal human being ever makes in a year. Okay, so there's your first problem, and assuming anyone could do that, that's great. Now, what's the apartment cash flow position look like? Well, since the person's bought 17 apartments for $5 million, they're actually getting an income of $9,350 per week because each apartment's renting out for $550. Now, what's their actual cash flow position though? Well, their cash flow position in the first year is $0. Why is it $0? Because all the income from the apartments, from the rental, is going to pay off the debt and it is also going to pay the expenses, the outgoing costs of that property portfolio. So their cash flow position is zero in the first year. I would say already it's a whole lot better than minus $296,000 per year. One person doesn't need to work at all to maintain a property portfolio. The other one needs to work within top 0.01% of Australian earners in terms of income. Okay, now what is the difference in scalability of these two property portfolios? Well, obviously the person investing in farmland, they're already paying $296,000 a year just to hold on to the debt or just to hold on to that property. So the scalability, in my opinion, is nothing. There's no scalability in that. You buy the farmland, you never buy anything ever again until you pay it off. End of story. Now, what's the scalability? Assuming the person is making the same amount of money as the person that would be buying the farmland. So that scalability difference, if that person buying the farmland is spending almost 300 grand a year on debt, the other person is saving 300 grand a year. And what could they do with that? They could literally buy another property cash every single year for the entire the entire period, which is 30 years, right? Now, in terms of growth, what's the difference between the growth rate for the farmland versus the apartment? Now, this is where I guess the farmland kind of shines. The farmland's in growing in value by 7% per year, which is nice. But unfortunately, the apartments are growing by 3% per year, which is not really that great, but it's actually pretty conservative. But the point is, obviously, the growth rate isn't good as apartments. And I will say this, most people, that's why they choose not to invest in the apartments. But here's what they're missing. Now, future cash flows of the farmland is zero. Obviously, it doesn't generate income. Future cash flows of the apartments is obviously the rental income, and that's going to increase conservatively by 4% per year. Now, this is what's interesting, and this is really what I need you guys to understand. Now, the farmland, the out-of-pocket for the person who invested in a farmland is $8.9 million over 30 years. Now, the reason I call myself a professional property investor is because I don't use any of my own income that I generate from a full-time job to support my property portfolio. My property portfolio supports itself. I get capital growth from my portfolio, and it doesn't require me to input any capital into it. I get rental income from my property portfolio. It doesn't require me to put any of my own income from it. If I was to quit my job, the property portfolio would continue to grow in income and capital growth. It doesn't require me to work. Now, obviously, this person who's bought the farmland, which is land, and that's a fantastic investment, as the people at the barbecue say, they have to come up with $8.9 million for 30 years. Crazy amount of money, right? Now, how much income does the person over 30 years that invested in the apartments, how much income do they have to come up with? Zero. They don't have to come up with any money. The property portfolio there supports itself, okay? And in fact, the fact is the income from the apartment portfolio is increasing by 4% per year. So on average, the people that invested in the apartments are generating $200,000 in passive. An average of the 30 years are generating a $200,000 per year average income for 30 years. On top of, this is passive income, guys. Okay, so here's again another reason why people would opt to go to the farmland is because in terms of capital growth, it is obviously the winner. So the end value, if they grew at 7% per year, the farmland, it'd be $38 million, and that's debt-free. Whereas the apartment value would be worth far less at $12 million with $0 of debt. But here's what's kind of interesting, right? You can't live off a farm. Like, what do I mean by that? I mean, farms don't generate any money. So you need money to function in society, right? So the benefit of buying the apartments is at the end of the period, it would only be worth $12 million. Yes, and you would be debt free. Yes, but the actual income that you would have generating from these apartments, because the income grows annually, is now $1.5 million. Okay, so that's the difference. Farmland generates no income, apartment portfolio generates $1.5 million income after 30 years. Now, here's some notes that I wanted to let you guys know to wrap this video up. Now, who are you getting your advice from and how did they get there? That's really important because there's so many people that have opinions, but they don't necessarily mean just because they have an opinion doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. And even if they do know what they're talking about and they have experience, how did they get there? Because I don't want to be getting some experience, some information from someone that has a $38 million portfolio worth farmland, but it cost them $8.9 million to get there. Because I don't know, I don't even want to generate $8.9 million from working a job, because it's hard. Whereas owning a property portfolio to generate a passive income, in my opinion, is easy. Okay, so that's that. And I would just say, obviously, the person that invested in the farmland, it was a very stressful journey. Every single day they had to wake up, and each week they had to generate $5,700 simply just to keep that farmland as an investment. Whereas the person that, as an investor, a professional investor, which is what I am, had to generate $0 to get to their end position. $0. Now, I just want to add, assuming that both people did genuinely generate an excess of $300,000 in cash per year, so we're comparing apples for apples here, if that investor chose to just simply buy one additional property each year in cash, the position would be much different. Yes, the investor, regardless of that, would be, in my opinion, in a better position. How much better of a position would they be in if they used that capital or that cash they were generating from their job to increase the property portfolio? So if they bought, for the whole 30 years of the mortgage, if they used $300 to buy an additional property every 30 years, they would have bought another 30 years, and that would have made them that would increase their capital position from $12 million to $21 million, because they would have increased their total asset base by $9 million, and it would have also increased their income by $850,000 per year. That's all the rental income from purchasing the additional 30 investment properties, and that is not accounting for any inflation at all. So, I mean, for me, there's a clear winner here, but it's up to you what you guys decide to do with your money. See you guys next time. Bye.